The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleagues and I have warned of the slow march to socialism for years, and we're called liars for it. And turns out it's not so much a slow march anymore as it is a sprint. More restrictions, more mandates, more socialist policies are never the answer. While we sit here and discuss an 881-page bill that no one has had time to digest and no chance of passing the Senate, there are still Americans terrified, stranded by the Biden administration in Afghanistan. He turned his back on them. Our southern border barely exists, and border communities have been left to the mercies of the cartels. He turned his back on them too. Americans are drowning under rising inflation costs. Now the Biden administration has once again overstepped into the lives and livelihoods of American citizens with the unconstitutional vaccine mandate on private companies employing more than 100 people. As if it weren't hard enough already to maintain staff after Democrats passed legislation to incentivize workers to remain out of the workforce. I'm not an economist, but I've been in business for over 35 years. I didn't deal with theories or hypotheticals. I dealt with the reality and the hard facts. It's not hard to understand that this is the wrong time for Democrats to shove one of the largest tax increases in American history on the American people that have not regained their strength from the brutal blow of COVID-19. Inflation is a tax on all Americans, and it hurts working class Americans the most. The $2.5 trillion tax and spending increase comes on top of rampant inflation that ordinary middle class Americans are already paying at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and every time they use their credit card. And it's getting worse. The latest data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that the inflation is rising at a near pandemic level of 5.3%, a level we have not seen since 2008. Looking at price growth during the Biden administration alone, inflation is at an annualized rate of 7.1%. Since the first quarter of 2021, Black women's annualized real wages decreased by over 13% and Asian women by 15%. At this rate, median household income will shrink in real terms by $409 every month during President Biden's first year in office. Not only have Americans experienced inflation, but a record number of Americans are expecting higher inflation in the near future. We look at just what the Federal Reserve Bank officials are now expressing concern over. The Dallas Federal Reserve Bank President, Robert Kaplan, noted that the inflation has disproportionately affected lower income communities, encouraged excessive risk taking. And the St. Louis Fed President, James Bullard, expressed fears that inflation is creating a bubble in the housing market. Congress is partly responsible. In February, on a completely partisan basis, Congress added almost $2 trillion of stimulus to an overheating economy. As the experts predicted, it fueled the most significant price inflation that this country has seen in decades. Americans now pay 11% more for bacon, 14% for ribs, 8% more for milk, and 40% for gas relative to 12 months ago. The CFO of the Kroger grocery store chain explained recently that due to inflation, it will have to begin passing along higher costs to the consumer. This does not square with the administration's highly touted claim that your 4th of July barbecue will cost 16 cents less. I hope they will at least acknowledge that the Labor Day barbecues cost a good deal more, and start putting out the fire instead of adding more fuel to it. Inflation is rising faster than wages. Fact. The lights have turned from yellow to red on inflation. Fact. And we ignore them at our own peril. My amendment would delay the effective date of the spending and tax increases in this bill until inflation is returned to a more sustainable 2.5% level, which is still higher than what we were before. I urge you to stop and think about the impact of your vote today on your constituents, all of them, and the millions of Americans who will face higher prices if the spending and tax increases we are considering here today are enacted into law, which we know they won't be because we have a Senate and a president who wants something different. I urge the adoption of my amendment, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Does the gentleman from California continue to insist on his point of order?